Deputy Kevin Humphreys. It's a 15-minute slot. It's just.
Thank you, Chair.
Yeah.
And thank you for.
Are you sharing time? You are.
Yeah, we are indeed, Teagas. And first of all, can I thank Deputy Mary Lou MacDonald and Captain Murphy for the contributions. I often feel, especially at this stage, maybe men should shut up and listen to the women. You know. Yeah.
But having said that,
well, having said that, but certainly Deputy Murphy's contribution there certainly, does critique the situation we now find ourselves in, and it's certainly a very sensitive time in the history of the nation. And certainly, when I'm listening to the debate, and I was listening to Deputy MacDonald on the television before I came down, the passion and the hurt that's been given over many generations and decades. I have to say, I think it's a very clear signal from the government the importance this issue is by the amount of time it's been given, over 20 hours. And I would first of all like to actually thank Deputy Daly and Sinn Féin for their motions earlier on in the month. Both motions from Claire Daly and the motions from Sinn Féin, I think was very valuable because it allowed us to frame the debate and the actions the government must take. I accept that those motions were put forward in very good faith, and I accept that the work that the Minister has been doing and the Cabinet has been doing is in the similar good faith. And it was in the programme for government that the expert group would take place. They've acted on that, and the expert group information was published. And unfortunately, at the time, an unfortunate woman passed away in Galway. I welcome the commitment the government has made that a decision would be taken before the Christmas recess on what action the government is going to propose, and that public hearings will be held at the Joint Committee of Health and Children. And I think when that's taken place, I think it's important that all voices are afforded the chance to speak and be heard, because this is a very it really does separate our society. Abortion has been a major political issue in Ireland now for the last 30 years, and I think it was the second campaign I actually was ever involved in. And I very much still remember the 8th Amendment in 1983. It was the first political action. I was out on strike at the time. It was a very long and bitter strike. But I remember in my own housing estate we had the posters up, and I was trying to explain why I thought the 8th Amendment was wrong at the time. And I was sitting in the sitting room. I got a knock on the door, and the polling station was quite a distance. And it was one of my neighbours, and they said, "Any chance of this to the polling station?" And I dropped the woman up to the polling station, came back down, and I'd say within about 10 or 15 minutes, there was 5 or 6 neighbours, mainly women. It wasn't, if people can remember the night, I can, it wasn't a particularly nice evening. All asking for lifts. And in the conversation, is their husbands had the car and was the driver, and they wouldn't drive to the polling station because they weren't happy with the way their wives were voting. And that has always had a very big effect on me since then. And that's what I really meant earlier on when I mentioned this. Men articulating a position on this that affects women and their health, I find it very difficult to stomach. And I think, as a society, we've come very far. Like, that label of an abortionist was over me in that housing estate for the remainder of the time. I even heard myself being referred to as an abortionist. And I'm pro-life as much as anyone else. And it's very difficult for, when you put labels, because I don't think any particular area, I think the feeling on this issue is deeply held by everyone. And I think we need to respect everybody's feelings and conviction, because they're very much held deeply and deep in their psychic. But it was dangerous to be a progressive voice. I remember the 2 divorce referendums. I think most people in the House here remembers very clearly the 2 divorce referendums. I remember when contraceptives couldn't be bought openly. The rights for the LGBT community really only recently starting to be recognised. It's really only comfortable for them now to become open. And just think of the thousands of women, and they are women, that has to leave Ireland and travel to England. You know, there's no recognition. You know, they're hidden members of our families, our societies, because I think the society is our family. And if we are truly caring people, we have to accept they went through a real torment about having to travel, to be alone, and go through that experience by themselves, and then come back and hide it from their own families. And a lot of them probably are still hiding, can't sit down, have a talk over a cup of tea, of truly a traumatic time in their life. And now we have a house full of men discussing their health issues. And, you know, things have moved on, and we have to accept, and I think the gender quota is going to be interesting. I think it's going to change politics fundamentally in Ireland. And I think it's going to be welcome, because even like people look at the budget we recently had and the influence people are saying about women have on it. And again, we're talking today about a woman's issue with very few women in this house. And I think personally it's time, you know, we allowed women to make decisions about their own health. I do think, and I will believe that every member of this House will try and be considerate to people's deeply held beliefs. But we have, I believe, a responsibility to legislate. It is going to be difficult. We're going to have discussions, and we're going to come under extreme pressure. But the very least we have to do is legislate in relation to what the X case, and maybe legislation and regulation. And Catherine Murphy, I think, contribution, I'm not going to go over the elements of what Catherine Murphy has contributed. I have to say, I'm very proud of the party, and Labour Party, and I don't mean the badge and the rose and the symbols. I'm talking about the members. You know, just recently in the last election, campaign workers of mine came back after canvassing with rosary beads and holy water thrown over them. Deeply religious people, and were shocked that they were met with that type of aggression on the doorstep. You know, so that's how deeply it is, and it's still there in Irish society. And again, I'm formed, and my view is formed in this from my experiences. You know, society had moved on slightly in the right to remarry. The bitterness in the 83 was really difficult. So I'm not going to contribute about what we're going to talk about the expert group and the 743 and the different elements of the recommendations. What I'm making an appeal this evening in this House is about tolerance. It's about understanding that people hold views very deeply. But there is a fundamental health issue here. There is a fundamental right, and that right is for a woman to have control and decision over her own body. And I would prefer that this chamber this evening was at least split 50-50 between men and women. But that doesn't reflect the makeup of our parliament. And it goes back, and if you think the referendum in the 80s is not that long ago, and that decision by men that they would not drive their wives to the polling stations to vote in that referendum. The one appeal I will say this evening is look and listen very carefully to your wives, your daughters, your sisters, because the legislation and the regulation we will come through here will deeply affect them and the next generation, because there isn't an appetite to revisit this over and over again. And my colleague's getting nervous here. There isn't an appetite to revisit this over and over again. I do have to deal with the X case, but I think that's the beginning. We need to go further. And I think this Dáil needs to take that step further, because there is other issues. There is rape, there's incest, and other. Thank you, Chair. I'm going to finish on that, and thank you very much for your time. Thank you.